First of all, I just have to thank everybody for being here today and flying out here and coming to talk such an important issue. As you can see, this matters to so many of us. Most of the public lands that we're talking about are in the West, and it really touches anybody who lives there or who has traveled there to recreate, quite honestly. I'm third-generation Nevadan. You can see this map right here of Nevada. Over 80% of the land is owned by the federal government. 60% is BLM land. We have the Humboldt-Tyabe National Forest that runs through Nevada, but most of it looks like that. That looks like almost the Red Rock Calico Basin. Most of it looks like that if you're hiking in Nevada, and you're going to see petroglyphs from our incredible culture and tribes that are there as well. And most of it is farming and ranching. Most people don't think of that. You think about Las Vegas, that's the only thing, and we love when you come to Vegas, but there's so much more to it, and that's what we're fighting to protect. I want to thank, first of all, Senator Heinrich for pulling this working group together here in this roundtable to have this discussion, because I think it is so important that we continue to shine a light on what's happening here with Mike Lee's bill. As we all know, the first iteration of his bill would have sold over 3 million acres of land. It fell out of the rules that we set here in the Senate. The parliamentarian said it doesn't follow the rules here, so he is trying to resubmit it with different text. I'm not sure that's going to satisfy. That will go through the parliamentarian as well. Here's what I do know. I couldn't agree more, Mike, that he is trying to couch this as a housing issue, and that's not what this is. Yes, we can figure out how to address housing in this country, including affordable housing, in a thoughtful, managed approach like we have done in Nevada and other states, but it isn't the wholesale, really, auction of public lands in this country. That's just not it. And so it is important for people to understand and not let him utilize this idea that we need housing, this is what it's about, because it's not. And by the way, if you even look at the language he's submitted over and over again, he doesn't define housing. Doesn't define affordable housing. So it's just what the concern that we all have is who's going to buy this land and who's going to be utilizing it, and then prevent so many of us from outdoor recreation or our livelihoods on it. Let me just say, the other thing is so short-sighted. It is clear they're trying to sell this public land to pay for this reconciliation package, which gives tax cuts to billionaires. That's what this is about. It's what it's about. But it's short-sighted. The outdoor recreation economy in this country is billions of dollars. I know in Nevada alone, our outdoor economy annually is $8.1 billion. That's over 58,000 jobs just in the state of Nevada in the outdoor recreation economy. So why would we forego that revenue to sell off our public lands to these billionaires? It is short-sighted and coming from a place that is not well thought out. And I am hopeful that Senator Lee is paying attention, and he is listening not only to all of us, but all of his colleagues who have concerns about this. If he wants to do something in his own state of Utah, more power to you. Go do it. Figure it out. Work with all the stakeholders. Let's do it. But don't come into our states and dictate what should be done. And by the way, if you want to go through this process, it should happen in a thoughtful manner with everybody at the table. You've heard Jocelyn, thank you, Jocelyn, for being here, talk about the importance of stakeholder engagement. Nevada has done that. We already have the Federal Public Lands Management Act. That is a process that we use. Hillary talked about it. In Nevada, over the years, we passed the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act. That's exactly what this is about. How do we get more federal land, bringing all the state, local partners together, government partners with our stakeholders, with the tribes, with conservationists, with our hunters, our anglers, outdoor recreationists? How do we all come together and figure out how we expand the land for our needs and still have conservation? That's what that law does. And that's why the legislation that I introduced does the very thing, brings everybody together. But Mike Lee's provision throws that out the window. Even though he talks about that's what he wants to do, it throws it out the window. That's not what this is. And I can't stress this enough. In Nevada, land, I can tell you, we're hearing from so many people. So for that reason, Senator Heinrich, I just, for the record, for 2 letters today. One is from the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California, who are opposed to the land sales, especially those that would increase development around Lake Tahoe. And I also have one from a coalition of organizations from Nevada's hunter and sportsman community who are concerned about the precedent being set of selling public land to pay for tax cuts and the reduction of access to our public lands for outdoor recreation. I also have received, I cannot tell you, my phones and my emails have been lit up by this. I have received into my office, over 400 people have called my office in the last 2 weeks, and over 6,600 people have written into my office to tell me they don't want our public land sold off to billionaires for this tax giveaway. It is important for my colleagues and Mike Lee to pay attention to what people are saying here. This is not the appropriate vehicle. This is not the appropriate time. And the language he has is not appropriate for what he is trying to achieve here at the end of the day. He needs to be listening to us. I'm all for figuring out how we get more housing and affordable housing, but it has to be done in a thoughtful process. And by the way, it has to include local zoning laws. How do we throw out a whole department and education around zoning that we need in our communities? So we are doing a thoughtful process in our population centers. The other thing his new text does not do, he talks about a boundary outside of a population center, but he doesn't define what a population center is. That could be in my state. You can go into Baker, Nevada. There's probably a small little community, not even 100 people. That could be that's a population center. It could be somewhere in the middle of Winnemucca, where there's Paradise Valley, a post office, and maybe a couple farms. That's a population center. But you know what happens around that population center? Hunting and hiking and outdoor and off-road recreation. So he is not being thoughtful about this process, and I can't stress this enough. My hope at the end of the day is he is listening to all of us, and he just withdraws it. And if he doesn't, looking forward to the parliamentarian taking a serious look at this and if there's any change to it. But let me, because I'm going to take advantage of you while you're here. And Jocelyn, let me ask you this first question. And I can't thank you enough for traveling. Jocelyn's story is my story. My father loved the outdoors. You grew up in the West. My father, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, they hunted. They camped, they hiked, they fished all over the land. That's how I grew up as a young girl for my father, taking his 2 daughters out and showing us the beauty of nature of Nevada and California, or in Utah and Wyoming and so many incredible places. So Jocelyn, talk a little bit, if you would, about SNPLMA. Not just the fact of the stakeholders that are involved, but also the importance of the funding through SNPLMA. The funding does not go into the Treasury, which all of this federal land does. If they sell it off at fair market value, it goes into the Treasury. In Nevada, we were very thoughtful about how we protect and preserve. So would you talk a little bit about that funding, why the importance of getting some of that money back into the state when you actually do have a thoughtful process for selling federal land that everybody agrees to? That money comes back into the state of Nevada. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you've done with the Conservation Lands Foundation?
Yeah, that's right. And I think the other part, too, is that it sets a parameter of exactly what lands will be sold. It's not the scatterplot paint thrown. You know, there is a ring around, okay, this is what our community needs as part of our zoning and planning and outlooks of, you know, land that we will need to grow, right, in a sustainable way. And the money then gets divided out into all of the things that you would think of if you're creating a new town, you know, or expanding one. You need water infrastructure. You need schools for the school kids that are going to move in and the families. And you need to then mitigate for the things that you've now taken their habitat away for. And so the funding really sets it up in a way that, you know, the state gets some money, the infrastructure that we need gets some money. We have money for things that communities are going to need, like education, parks, right, trails, just improvements generally. And you're also then mitigating for the damage, right, that you've caused, because development causes damage. Whether we need it or not, it does. And so we've been able to then put money towards tortoise habitat restoration, fencing, you know, making sure that the population is able to be successful and the community can enjoy it. I mean, all of these parks that I mentioned, these recreation visitor centers, they are the reasons why people want to move to Las Vegas. And so it just continues to create this cycle for the community where you're getting benefits from all sides. And that's what makes it worth having. And that's why it's been a successful and thoughtful, process, which would be, I know they want to replicate it in other places. But I think that those are the core components. It's land that people, can use. We're still setting aside places and improving those places with the funding, for the habitat restoration, for the recreation improvements. And so the whole community benefits and is able to grow and be successful.
Thank you. And then one final thing, and maybe Landon, you touched on this. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about it. There's been a group of us working that are the states, the basin states along the Colorado River. That's just one water source, but it's one we know that is key to all of our states that are along that Colorado River. And we have worked together in a bipartisan way as senators to put funding through the Inflation Reduction Act, about $4 billion, to ensure that funding goes back into the Colorado to look at how we conserve water, look at new water projects that will recycle water, how the states we can incentivize the states to engage in that conservation and preserve more of that water. What Mike Lee has put into this legislation, how does that address the water needs of the western states? Is there anything in it that he even thinks about to address the water needs that are a key for all of this?
I don't think he thought that through. I don't recognize that language in there at all. And I think that, as I talked about before, and you're doing this because water is such an important resource, and you're living in a place that's very arid. The West is arid in general. And so I think keeping these public lands and public waters in public hands, and one of those things in this bill is it doesn't designate who actually can buy this. This can be foreign entities that buy this. Do we want some foreign company owning our water? I would say no, again. And so no, he does not address that.
Well, let me just add a finer point to this, because most people, this is why should be a thoughtful approach. In Nevada, we have Nellis Air Force Base, we have Creech Air Force Base, we have a Naval Air Station, we have Hawthorne Army Depot. I can guarantee you there are foreign entities coming and purchasing land around some of those areas. Yeah. And we have fought at the federal level to pass legislation to make sure that cannot happen. Yeah. But there is nothing in this language that prevents some foreign country that wants to come in and continue spying on the activity that happens in Nevada, where we do a lot of the training for our military. There's nothing that stops them from purchasing that land, and that is a concern.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Hillary? Because I know we've talked.
Yes.
So Hillary and I go way back, because when I was Attorney General, she was working at the Interior, and we worked together on a number of issues for Nevada. I appreciate your being here.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So definitely there's concern about just not doing that land management planning process. Like right now, Interior Department can look at lands and consider, should we have these be looked at for potential different use other than BLM use? That is in the law right now. But there is a process where you do land management planning, where you look at issues like water use, habitat impacts, utility availability, what is the interest of the community in terms of wanting to have that change in the land status from federal public land. And then also just being sure that there is the right assessment of the economic need for this change in the land status. The law currently says, and Congress was wise about this and looked at, is there an economic use that justifies this transition in changing the land tenure of the United States? So all of these things are not laid out in the current proposal when it is in the existing law. So we don't need to change something that already works. Mm-hmm.